Okay, hi everyone. So welcome to our audience and welcome to our candidates. Welcome to our first question time of elections week. My name's Verity Lem. I'm the current post holder and I'm excited to ask your candidates the questions that you want to know the answers to before voting for them in the election to become your next academic year VP activities. So for this event, we do have closed captions enabled, so please use the Zoom settings to turn them on. This event is also being recorded and will be published afterwards. Thank you to all of our students that submitted questions to be asked. We are limited to the number that we can cover in this session due to some time restrictions, but please do ask your candidates the questions that you want after this event. You can find them on their social media. There were a number of questions submitted about refunds and COVID planning. Those questions are not suitable for our candidates to answer, but UPSU will be covering them as soon as we are able to. After the questions that are submitted in advance have been asked, we will be asking questions from the audience. Please use the Q&A function to ask these, keeping them appropriate and in relation to the role rather than questions for a specific candidate. We want all of our candidates to be able to answer any of the questions. The questions will be moderated by staff and, as expected, any inappropriate or offensive comments will be removed. So before we make a start of the questions, I'm going to hand over to our candidates to just quickly introduce themselves. So Madeline, would you like to start?
Of course. So my name is Madeline Morton and I am one of the candidates for VP activities this year. If you have any questions at the end and you just want to call me Mads, then that'd be great.
Perfect. One.
My name's Owain. I'm also a candidate for VP activities and I don't have a nickname. I'm really bland and boring, so I'm just Owain.
Chucks.
Hi, my name is Obio Emmanuel Chukwuike, but you can call me Chucks. I'm a third year business student and I'm running for Vice President activities.
Perfect. So I'm going to start asking the questions. The candidates are going to have 2 minutes to answer, but you don't have to use all this time. Please take your time in answering, and if you need a few moments before you answer, that's also fine. For each question, I'll come to you in a random order, so you each have a chance to answer the questions first at a different point. So without further ado, the first question we have is, should you be elected, what would your first priority be? We're going to go with Mads first. So when you're ready.
Of course. So my first priority will be to get to know the student groups. So sports clubs, societies and volunteer groups and what they entail, how many of them there are, the chairs of each, and understand their wants and their needs for the next year. Because I think it's important to not only give them what they need, but also try and provide with them with what they want as well. I think it's going to be really important to look at the impact COVID has had this year, which I will explain more on question 3, but this will also be one of my first priorities. I also think it's really important to understand the barrier that is in place to participation within the student body. So is it that student groups are intimidating? Is it that they don't know they exist? And finding out what that is so that we can provide them with an opportunity to join, because I think we all know that the student groups in the university really do make the university what it is. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, Mads. If we come to Chucks next, would you like me to repeat the question or are you fine to go?
No, I'm fine to go, thank you.
Off you go.
My first priority if elected will be to gain the trust of each and every student, society, sports clubs and volunteers. After COVID has caused such a gap between the students and the student union, so I would like the students to know that they actually own the student union and the student union is in place for them. And so I will be reaching out to all students, members of societies, sports clubs and volunteers to be able to gain their trust. And I plan on gaining their trust by accountability, because I believe that accountability breeds responsibility. And so I'll report back to them every step I'm taking in the process of implementing their wants and demands. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And finally, Owain.
Thanks, Vee. I think that that priority with talking to the groups and understanding their problems, we've already started that. That's sort of what this campaign is for. I think it does go a step further than that. We need to understand the problems and how to solve them, but there's a number of ways that we can figure out and sort of formulate the solutions. So we're not in the NUS anymore, but I would prioritize over the summer while students aren't on campus. I would prioritize joining that national conversation. There's so many different conferences going on all of the time. I did a few last year. And there's all of these different unions that have provided all of these different solutions. We haven't tried every solution, and there are problems with the way we do things, but someone else might have tried a solution that probably works better than the way we do it. So why aren't we involving ourselves in those conversations? So we don't just need to see the problem, we need to see an array of answers and see which one best fits us. But even then, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I think we need to look at the training and how we train committee members, because obviously that's the first stepping stone to the rest of the year. We need to look at that and see how we are telling them what to do at the start of the year and how that's impacting them later on. And at the minute, for a lot of groups, they're either feeling that the training is boring, generic, doesn't work for them, or that it's just completely pointless anyway. But even then, the first priority question is a hard one, because we've all got manifesto points, we've all got different ideas and different solutions. I wouldn't like to point at one and go, I want to do that. I want to do all of it. And I don't want to put a timestamp on any of it, because to me, they're all equally as important. So yeah, I'd look at seeing how we're going to change our ways straight away, so that by the time we get back to campus in September, we're ready. Thank you.
Perfect, just on time as well. Thank you for your answers, guys. So we'll move on to the next question now. At any point, if you want the question repeating, please just let me know. I'll be happy to do so. So the next question we have is, recognising that sports clubs, societies and volunteering are separate entities, how do you plan to promote the unique identities and communities of each? So we'll go to Owain first. When you're ready.
Thank you. I'm going to start off by ripping into what I think doesn't work and what I don't think is the right answer. So a lot of feedback that I've been getting from smaller clubs and societies generally is that Team Plymouth doesn't work for them. We know that we had 3 branches of media for each of our groups, and they all had a solid identity. They all had, their belonging, and every club and society has that. We need to celebrate it more. But Team Plymouth doesn't do that for everyone. It does it for a lot and big groups that are really successful, and we should still always be proud of that. But so many groups fall through the net because it doesn't cover everybody. So we need to look at how we treat that, because the Team Plymouth brand is really, really cool. It's a really good idea, and it should work for all of us, but at the minute it doesn't. So we need to look at how we are reaching out to student groups, how we're seeing what they're doing, and it shouldn't be a case of us waiting for people to tell us what they've done. We should be reaching out, and at the minute we're not reaching out enough. I would also split the icons up. Icons, the way we recognise societies and clubs, is a one hat fits all solution. It shouldn't be like that. Sports clubs, societies and volunteering groups all are very niche to each other, let alone to the different departments. So we need to celebrate that. We need to split the icons up to recognise that. On top of that, when we are rewarding people who have gained through icons, we need to actually give them the rewards that they want, not ones that they'll just end up getting. We need to make sure that when we do say thank you very much for doing this amazing work, we're giving them something that's worthwhile, not something that's just a recognition scheme.
Perfect, thank you for that, Owain. Chucks, if we come to you next, when you're ready.
Yeah, I do agree that they're all separate entities, but I believe in unity and diversity, and I believe that there's more we can achieve together than separately. I believe that we're all in the same team and we all have the same goals, because we're all students, and ultimately we all want improved student experience. Having said that, I will work with individual societies, sports clubs, and volunteers to achieve their individual yearly goals, policies, and objectives by closely working with the committees and members, whereby I'll be briefing them about my day-to-day activities if elected as VP, and they will be briefing me about their own activities, how they've been running the events of their sports clubs and societies. That way, we'll be able to promote and champion each sports club, society, and volunteer their causes to the forefront. And the same way, we're still maintaining unity and cohesion, because ultimately we're one team. Thank you.
Thank you, Chucks. And finally, Mads, when you're ready.
Yeah, so I agree with both of the candidates that they are separate, yes, and they're both, and all three are very individual. They all do very completely different things. But I also think it's important to realise that sports do volunteering and societies do sports via intramural. So it shows that we're all we are one team and we can all help each other out constantly. And I think it's so important that, like Chuck said, the unity, that we are Team Plymouth and that this needs to be more of a team. The minute we have a event like Varsity, all of a sudden it's Team Plymouth Marjan and we're all together. But throughout the year, that seems to fizzle out, and it's football, rugby, and hockey in terms of sports clubs. But I think that if everyone gets together, societies, the volunteering, and the sports club, I think that it would make the participation in each one so much more, because if you have that opportunity to be, say, a footballer as I am, and be able to join Tropical Island Society, say, I didn't even know that they existed before coming into this role, and I would have loved to know they existed because they're such a fab society, as they are a lot of others. So I think that working together, we can all the student groups can really make the Team Plymouth like family really become something important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mads. So coming on to our third question, I'm sorry to bring it up, but it does relate to COVID, but I think obviously it's really important to touch upon that. How would you assist the clubs and societies who have been badly hit by COVID and have been unable to gain members and grow as a club or society? So we're going to come to Chucks first. So when you're ready.
Thank you very much for this amazing question. I hold this topic very sensitive because this was one of the main reasons I decided to run. A lot of societies and sports clubs have been affected by the effects of COVID, and so they've not been able to effectively able to effectively carry their functions, and so their membership has reduced. And so in my manifesto, one of my points was wider inclusivity, whereby I will reach out to typically underrepresented students. So what I would do is I'll reach out to students that are not typically members of sports clubs and societies to come and be part of these sports clubs and societies. And this will, to a tremendous amount, boost the amount of members in sports clubs and societies. Also, if we'll organize more and improved sports events and social events, when students that are not part of sports clubs and societies see the type of that the events are well to do and are fun, they will want to be a part of it and want to take part in these sports events and societies. There are a lot of reasons why students are not part of sports clubs and societies right now, because they feel like they are disoriented. They feel like they've seen it all. And so I would like to bring about new policies and ideas that will enable a lot of more students to participate, because I feel like when I was looking at the stats, there are about 2,000 members of sports clubs and societies, whereas there are over more than 25,000 students in the university. And so the percentage is quite low. And so we need to tremendously increase the amount of people that participate in sports clubs and societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chucks. Mads, if you're okay to answer next.
Of course, yeah. So obviously COVID has been really hard on all of us, and I think that it's made sports clubs, they haven't been able to do their fixtures, societies haven't been able to do their events, and I think it's been a really hard hit for all of us. I think a meeting at the end of the year would be really beneficial with the chairs, whether this is via Zoom or whatever we can do, to see how it's impacted them. So almost a COVID impact assessment plan, where we can work out who's been the hardest hit, which groups have been the hardest hit, and then do the same at the start of next year to see again, because obviously next year we never know. It might be that people are so excited to get back out there, our attendance might shoot up, which is quite likely the way things are going. But I think that the monetary impact and that kind of thing is going to be something we're going to have to see over a couple of years. So I think it can't just be a right, we're back to normal, crack on. I think it's got to be a let's review this every quarter and see how you're doing. Has it been a real impact, or are you seeing no real effects? So yeah, I think that the most important thing is to just keep assessing and see where we're at, and having this COVID impact assessment plan, which can allow us to see the hardest hit groups and therefore really help them push to get more members and spread their word more. And like I said, through my inclusivity, allow other sports clubs to do that. The big sports club with loads of followers, the big societies with the followers, the volunteering, help each other to get these numbers up, I think would be really beneficial for everyone. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, Mads. And Owain, if you're okay to answer when you're ready.
I'd go a step further than that. I think that should be done every year anyway, because there are so many clubs that we've lost and have fallen behind, in societies and volunteering groups, because they might not have made up their numbers. But that's not a reason we should be closing them down. It's not. We shouldn't be penalising groups that are falling behind, and at the minute they are feeling penalised. They are feeling left out, and that's part of the reason why some groups don't feel like the SU does work for them. We need to reach out to those groups to make sure that, and not just because of COVID. We need to reach out and make sure that they're happy, they're healthy in themselves. Because when you've got committee members who are happy and healthy, in theory, you'll have a happy and healthy group. So ensuring that we are protecting and looking out for our committee members is step one. Not penalising them when they fall just below the cracks is another thing. If you don't make up 20 members, don't worry about it. It's been a hard year. And we need to think about that every year. We need to think about why groups don't make up their members. Because our communication systems don't work, our management systems don't work, so that when they're not getting put out there on the website as much as they'd want to, when they're not getting the coverage they'd feel like they deserve, of course they're not going to make up their members because they're not getting seen. So we need not to penalise anybody. The rules of UPSU are complex and complicated, but a lot of time bullshit. So we need to be really careful on how we treat our societies and groups going forward, because they've struggled.
Thank you, Owain. So moving on to our fourth question, it ties in quite nicely actually. There has been a lack of engagement with UPSU student activities within the student population for a number of reasons. How could this be improved? How would you improve it? So if you're ready, Mads, we'll come to you first on this one.
So I think it was Chucks that talked about the population of the university and how many, and the percentage towards the student groups isn't as high as we'd like it to be. And I think that this is such an important aspect, because I think people see sports clubs as sports societies as society, but what they don't realise is the family that brings to people that are involved, and the fact that if you need support, you don't just have your course mates that you may not get on with, you don't just have your housemates that you may not get on with, you've got something else as well that can provide that support. And I think there are so many sports and societies and volunteering that we have out there. There's something for everyone. And like Orion said, you can also create your own. So everyone should feel as though they can be a part of it. And I think the way to do this is to advertise this at sports fairs, really get it out there that this is such an important thing for freshers to do, because I think when you get there, it's all a bit nerve-wracking. And to go to the sports fairs and everyone be very kind and friendly, it automatically makes you feel better. And I think that we do a good job in our sports fairs. I think they're done very well. And I think this year's been a struggle, yes, because we haven't been able to have a proper sports fair. But I think just promoting this, not just using social media, putting things in halls and emailing and everything we can possibly do to encourage participation to these sports fairs, because we can't just say, right, get a club to send out messages saying join our sports club, because they might not like it. I think the students need to learn for themselves what is right for them and what they feel they want to do by going to the sports fairs and the society fairs and seeing what's out there for them. And I also think within the student groups, I know that the SU do activities that aren't necessarily related to the
Time, Mads.
sorry.
Sorry.
No, don't worry, that's my fault. Thank you.
No worries, thank you. Owain, if you're okay to answer when you're ready.
I'm scared of the timer now.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think that this year has been, I don't think it's just been sort of like a struggle with the fairs. I think it's been diabolical. I think that there were so many mistakes made in the lead up to Refreshers Fair, and that led to students becoming the product, not the place that we can sell things. You know, we have so many opportunities in the SU, even during COVID. Yeah, and somehow, you know, pot noodle and Nando's took place a priority in the Refreshers Fair. That somehow doesn't seem fair. So we need to make sure that we don't make that mistake again. We need to celebrate all student groups. We need to make sure that nobody slips under the cracks by reaching out, by constantly engaging and catching up with them. It doesn't need to be for any specific purpose. It just needs to be like a little check-in to see how they're doing. And if they're all right and they don't want anything, fantastic, crack on. But if they do, you know, we can advertise this and that. We can make sure that their fixtures are being put out there. We can do quite a lot for them without them having to do any work. And at the minute, they feel like they're having to do so much work to get that outreach. So that's the first sort of like shameful bit. But there's the flip side of that, which is quite positive. Collaboration always leads to more engagement. Even though you're both members of the group that you're being brought to that specific event for, you're then introduced to another group. So like this Thursday, Debate and Friends of MSF are collaborating, and they, you know, societies with, in theory, not that much in common, but they've so many opportunities to work together. That's just one way that you can introduce collaborations, and that way the Debate members will learn about Friends of MSF, they'll learn about Debate, and maybe they'll join each other afterwards. So it'll always lead to growth, no matter which way you spin it, and you can do that with all student groups.
Lovely, thank you, Owain. And Chucks, if you're ready to answer.
Can you please repeat the question again? Sorry.
Of course. So there has been a lack of engagement with UPSU student activities within the student population for a number of reasons. How could this be improved?
Oh, okay. Like I said earlier, this is one of the reasons I decided to run. It's top of my list, actually. So, like I said earlier, improved student activities. The stats don't match up with the student population, regardless of COVID, and COVID has only made it gotten worse. And so, if elected, I would try to bring about improved activities whereby sports clubs and societies would have more and improved activities, because the reason why a lot of students don't participate in events, I'm talking based on what people have told me during the campaign, is that they feel like they've seen everything the SU has to offer in terms of activities. They keep doing the same things over and over again. And so we need to bring about new policies and ideas that will make students go out and feel like, oh, wow, that was different, sort of thing. This will enable them to participate more when there are future events. Something else is award and recognition. I see that the university and the student union right now give awards to like prizes to like students that participate in student activities. But I feel like if we improve the awards and their recognitions to students who participate and excel in activities organized by the university, this will go a long way to encourage other students to participate in the events. Another point there is telling students the advantages of being part of a society or sports club. In sports, bonds are formed because your team members are like your family, because you guys go out there. For example, a football team, you're 11 different players, but when you're on the pitch, you're all one. And so you create like a bond, a family bond. And so during times like COVID, when you're having issues like mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Great answers, guys. So coming on to our next question, it touches upon mental health and mental wellbeing, which I know is really important, and it runs through all of your manifestos. So Do you think clubs and societies need to provide more support for their members with regards to mental health? And what might this look like? So, Owain, if we come to you first.
I think this is a really good question because it does set us as candidates apart quite nicely. Because I don't think that a lot of what we've tried this year has worked. So I don't think so. We've got wellbeing advocates in clubs and societies, and they are working for their clubs and societies, but we've got a lot more clubs and societies without. So we need to think why their committee members didn't pick up on that opportunity, why they didn't look at that and go, yeah, that's such a good idea, or why they couldn't. Maybe they wanted to, but couldn't access it. It's probably because being a committee member or a member at the minute is a lot of pressure. So we need to put more pressure on these. So at the minute, they've got really good services and training available to them. We could do better and revamp the training system, but we could help signpost a lot more, because the university has loads of services that are really hard to access because their signposting isn't very good. So what we could do is create an efficient signposting system that committees can easily just pass over, that relieves pressure off of them, and then will actually benefit members because they can get on doing whatever they want to do. So we don't need to add pressure onto societies and clubs. We just need to give them the tools that they need to help develop themselves. So we certainly don't need to make things more complicated. We need to make things easy.
Thank you, Owain. Great answer. Mads?
So I agree that the wellbeing advocates have been brilliant for sports clubs, and I see that some sports and societies haven't picked this up, but I believe personally that it should be an essential committee role. I mean, mental health is very much becoming, as it should, as important as health and safety. You wouldn't allow a team to play a game without a health and safety officer there, or someone who's first aid trained. So I think it's very similar. I don't think you should be, I think all teams should have that wellbeing advocate there, someone to talk to, someone who's non-judgmental and has been given some sort of training. And again, I do think that obviously as mental health, it comes to the forefront, I believe that this training could get a lot better as we go on. I think with the resources we have, I think we can keep improving this training to make sure the wellbeing advocates are getting the resources they need to send to their committees and their whole body of students that's with them. And I think this will increase the talk and the openness that is within the student groups, which is a huge benefit to mental health. I also think that student groups are a great platform for support, as I've said. So I think that it really does allow everyone someone to talk to that might not be someone you're living with all the time, just an extra person or people that you know you can count on. I also think it's really important to increase exercise for non-sport groups, so societies and volunteer groups, because exercise is proven to increase your mental health. So I think initiatives need to be put in place to do this as well. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Mads. And finally to Chucks, if you're okay to answer.
Yeah, thank you. This is very important because my last point was going to just led to this, and I feel it's like it's coincidence. What I was saying, I feel like sports clubs and societies have done quite a lot for the mental health of the students so far this year. And I say this because there are lots of societies and sports clubs that have groups, and you make friends who turn to family when you participate in sports clubs and societies. And so for me, for example, when I was down and having a mental health issue, the fact that there was no one on the committee that was representing like mental health issue board, I could still reach out to friends I made through being part of sports clubs and societies. Because when you're talking to someone about your mental health, the person doesn't just have to be like a member of a committee or have experience. You have to trust the person. You have to be able to relate to the person. You have to believe that the person can be confidential with you. And I say sports clubs and societies do create bonds. And so I believe that they've done quite a lot already. But I do believe they can do more and improve, because we need to see each other in sports clubs and societies as more family and our brothers keepers, so we can be able to talk to each other and like help each other in our times of needs. But I do believe the university should actually do more for students' mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Chucks. So coming on to our last pre-submitted question. Why should you be elected and what makes you stand out from the other candidates? So I'm first going to come to Chuck. So when you're ready, take it away.
With all sense of humility and not trying to come across wrongly to any of my other candidates, I believe that now more than ever, we need passionate, purposeful leadership that is driven to make an impact and champion student voices because of the effect COVID-19 has had on us as students. It's been a very terrible year. The past 1 year has been very slow, and all the things we hold dearly to our hearts about students' experience has been ruined. And so this impacted my reason to run, because I want us to hit the ground running. And I believe that we need to hit the ground running because we've already wasted a lot of time due to COVID. And so we need to make up for lost times. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you for your answer. Owain, when you're ready.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions because this is like a proper campaign stump speech, isn't it? And none of us have talked about ourselves, which is amazing for about half an hour in. I think that I would be the best candidate because of my experience. So I've got experience in both the volunteering and societies departments. I've helped build societies sometimes from scratch. I've done it, I think, 3 times now. And because of the societies I've been in, I've been able to go and see the way other societies in Britain do it. I've been to those conferences. I have the tools that I need to actually get the ball rolling. Looking at engagement, there are other unions who have proven that by simply doing things like renaming Freshers' Fair wouldn't cost anything, wouldn't change anything, we'd still run it in exactly the same way. Simple little changes like that can mean a whole world of difference to clubs and societies. But instead of having to spend all of the summer learning that, I already know things like that. So I don't need to waste the time kicking the ball to get it rolling, because for me, it's already rolling. I've got that knowledge. With those links to societies, clubs and volunteering, looking at how we are looking after mental well-being, how we are looking at how well the icons does, looking at how well we do communicate with other societies around us. They're all things that we've had to do before, especially during COVID. And because, you know, one of the societies I helped started during COVID, you know, that's not easy when some are struggling to get those members together. So I've tried some things and definitely failed, but I've made those mistakes. So I'm ready to not make the mistakes to help other people. It only makes sense.
Great, thank you, Owain. And finally, Mads, when you're ready.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, well done to the other 2 candidates, 100%. And they're both brilliant. Honestly, I think all of our manifestos are different, but we all make very good points. And I think whoever wins the election will definitely take on each other's points. I think that's important to say. But what stands me out, I think, is just the love I have for Plymouth Uni and the societies, the sports clubs, the volunteer groups. I just think it is not Plymouth Uni without it. I know from my own experience that the first month of university, my first year, I very nearly dropped out. I didn't enjoy it. And then I found football and I just had this family all of a sudden, and it was the best experience. And I just think everyone should experience that. I also think, obviously, I am captain this year of the football team, and that has massively brought up my leadership skills. And being on committee for 2 years now, I've been in touch with the SU and I understand how it works with sports clubs. And I don't claim to know all about societies and the volunteer groups, but I just think that, honestly, I'm so passionate about positive change that I am so willing to learn about everything about them. And I just genuinely want everyone to come together. And I know it sounds sort of cliche and like, oh, it might not happen, but I do think that it's just so important after this year to just realise what we have and understand that as together, we're going to be a lot more than we are separate. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, everyone.
Brilliant, thank you, Mads. So we have had one question come in, What I will do is I will read it twice, then give you a moment and then come round. So the question is, do you think that any student should be able to run for any position on committees? Oh, sorry, it's just moved. On committees, and are there ways in which students that have not had experience can be better supported to run for these positions? So I'll read it again. Do you think that any student should be able to run for any position on committees? And are there ways in which students that have not had experience can be better supported to run for these positions? So I'll come to Mads first, but do take a moment to gather yourself if you need it. And then just begin when you're ready.
I do think that any student should be able to run for position on committee. I'm not sure if we're talking about first years. I don't think it's maybe right for first years to be on committee because it's very intense and they don't even know if they like it yet. So how can they be committed? I mean, it's a committee, you need to be committed. So I think that apart from first years, any experience, yes, you should be able to be on committee. Having had no experience, I know personally that if you are able to, we do handover. I'm not sure how it works in societies, but handover is massive. I learned a big role through a PowerPoint and talking to my predecessor, and it was a hard role. And I think that this is down to the clubs to help people with no experience understand the role. But I think that as this position could very much help by, I know there's how-to guides on the SU website on how to do everything, and you have compulsory committee training, which is very good. But I think that it's very important to not just say, here's your training, crack on, but to have a review, maybe a month or 2 months on, say, how are you doing? Is there anything that we can add to next year's how-to and training that would have been helpful for your first go at training? I think that would make a huge difference in those that had zero experience. So thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Mads. And we'll come to Owain next. Would you like the question repeating, or are you?
No, I'm all good.
Perfect.
Thank you. So this question comes with a bit of background and context because this was tried recently, and I completely get why the committee that tried to do it wanted to do it, because there were a big society that were involved with a lot of outside groups that didn't always understand the way the university ran. So having someone experienced at the top to be able to at least keep the wheels rolling in the right direction, that was a really wise idea. Why we can't restrict committee memberships, and I'd go a step further. I think even if you are a first year, you should be able to give it a go. You shouldn't restrict being able to become a committee member, because that will open it up to bigger problems. You could end up either intentionally or accidentally discriminating against a certain person or a certain group, and that becomes really problematic. So whilst I do understand the need to keep that knowledge, to keep that understanding where you want it in the committee, you need to be really, really careful in how you do that. So I think how you do that is by emphasizing handover. I don't think handover is emphasized enough in a lot of committees. And that's how you have societies really, really changing the way they operate every single year. Sometimes that works, but obviously a lot of time it doesn't. And we revamped the training. The training is the same PowerPoint every single year. There's no testimonials. There's no past committee members helping out training. Why? It doesn't make any sense, because they've got the experience. They know how to do it. They've done it. So we need to definitely leech off the knowledge of previous committee members, but we don't need to restrict any position on any committee.
Brilliant, thank you, Owain. And we'll come to you, Chucks, finally. Would you like the question repeating?
No, that's fine.
Perfect.
I do not believe that any student should be restricted from running for any position in a committee because of, let's say, for example, their year, because I believe strongly in the principle of equity and equality, and I also believe in democracy. And so if so long as you're a student and you're a member of society, it does not matter if you're in first year or in second year or third year, so long as you have the passion and you're driven and you're ready to work, and your fellow committee members and members of the society vote you, then you should be elected to whatever position in the committee whatsoever. And members of the society, if a first year is elected to such a position, should give them adequate and full support, because a lot of times knowledge is not is not monopolized. So knowledge is not for like who's older or anything. Someone in first year can have more ideas than someone in third year if they're developed. So I believe they should be given more support by organizing support programs, and also members of previous committees in past years and more experienced members of current committees and sports clubs and societies should give adequate advice and help to new committee members where necessary. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. We have had another question come in. So it has been said that sports clubs have been prioritised over societies. What would you do to make sure that both are treated equally in the future? So I'll read it one more time. It has been said the sports clubs have been prioritised over societies. What would you do to make sure that they are both treated equally in the future? So we'll come to Owain first. Obviously, have a moment if you need it, but when you're ready, please make a start.
Sorry, I couldn't work the button. I do think a lot of societies do feel that divide. I think we've got to remember that volunteering exists as a different department, starters. So they are clearly not getting equal treatment if, you know, they're not even mentioned a lot of the time. And we got to remember the smaller clubs feel like that as well. They do sometimes feel like the funding might not make sense because it's not explained well enough. You know, when a certain group manages to go on tour 3 times a year, but all of a sudden another club is only getting a tenner in the bank account, you know, that somehow something's not weighing up. And those are very extremes and very exaggerated, but that's how people feel. So we definitely need to start quite simply by better explaining these systems and how they work. The way money is handed out is done with very little explanation, whether it's done through the funding schemes, whether it's done through the little pots of money for different reasons, so like competition funding and that sort of thing. You know, we need to explain how that works and why we are justifying giving so much money to some and not so much to others. That needs to be sorted. It's not a case of it's always wrong, but if it is wrong, we need to understand why. And if it isn't, why do people feel like it is? We also need to look at how we are missing quite a lot of people's celebrations. If a club or society has done something amazing, why aren't they being celebrated on the website just because we've missed it? We need to be reaching out to these people, and it is that simple as just catching up and see what's going on. We need to be the ones reaching out. We don't need to sit here with an open inbox lecturing them from afar. We need to be active in their success, and at the minute we're not.
Brilliant, thank you, Owain. Chucks, we'll come to you next, if that's all right.
Like I said earlier, I believe strongly in equity and equality. And so everyone will be a priority. No one will be prioritized more than the other because we are all on the same team. And the main goal is for improved student experience, and we're all students. So what we do is more fair funding, where sports clubs and societies will be given fair funding to be able to run all the activities effectively and efficiently without any hiccups along the way. I would also be accountable to them. Like I said earlier in my first points, that I said earlier when you asked my first questions, that accountability will be my priority because that will build trust. And so I'll be accountable to all sports clubs and societies and volunteers, explain to them how funds are being allocated, why funds are being allocated, the way they're being allocated. And if they need more funding, and articulate why they need more funding, I'll channel it to the right place where more funding, and I will lobby and fight for more funds to be allocated to them, because I firmly believe that we all should be treated equally as we are all one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chucks. And finally to Mads, when you're ready to answer, please do.
So I do think that it's an issue that sports clubs are treated maybe more, they're given more money, I know that, and they're sort of, more people know about sports clubs than they do maybe the societies. Books, I know, is the Books fixtures, which is the sports league, is shown on the SU TVs, I believe, throughout the week or maybe on certain days. And I think that it would be important to maybe show the society and the volunteering events as well, not just fixtures, but also the the events that they put on. Whether it's to attend or maybe just to see that this is happening, that this society exists, this volunteering scheme is happening. I think that's really quite important to close that equality gap. As much as the money issues are very prevalent, I understand that, but also I think it's within the clubs as well. It's one of those issues where I know some sports clubs feel other sports clubs get more. So I know that that's within our own little part of student groups as well. So I think that this is an issue that needs to be sorted out, not just throughout the three different, the three different student groups, but also sports clubs itself. And one of my manifesto points, my first one of celebration and inclusivity, I mean, this is related to that, because obviously I want to celebrate volunteer groups and societies and sports clubs on the Instagram, on all the social medias, so everyone understands, look, these all exist, and it's very important to celebrate every single person within Team Plymouth and not just sports clubs. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, Mads. So we do have one short follow-up question. I will give you a moment after I've read it. So it's a follow-up question to the questions about people being on committees. If first years shouldn't be on a committee, should they be discouraged from starting their own student groups? So if first years shouldn't be on committees, should they be discouraged from starting their own student groups? So answer the best you can. Chucks, will come to you first. Take a moment, but when you're ready, you can start.
I don't think first years shouldn't be allowed in committees. I don't know, like that's an absurd. I feel like that's absurd to say that first years shouldn't be among committees, because they are students just the same way third years are students. If, like I said, if they're passionate and driven and are qualified and are voted for by all the members of the society or the sports clubs, then they should be part of the committee. Having said that, regardless of whether first years, even if first years are part of societies and sports clubs committees, they should still be encouraged to form their own societies if they want, because everyone has the right to form a society or club if they want, as everyone has the right to freedom of association. So of course everyone should be encouraged to form their own sports club societies. But I do believe that first years should be encouraged. In fact, first years should be encouraged to be part of societies and sports clubs committees from early, so that when they do get to second year and third year, they'll be more experienced and the level of activities will be more improved, because they would have learned from previous mistakes, and they'll be able to groom more first years that are coming through the ranks to be able to keep such a high standard. So yes, thank you very much for the question.
Brilliant, thank you, Chucks. And Mads, if we come to you next when you're ready.
I do understand that maybe it sounds a bit funny that I think that first year shouldn't be allowed on committee. I just know from previous years that first year is so nice to just enjoy being part of that club and understand what it's all about before you can really delve into the stress of it. Again, might be different for societies and volunteering. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that they should be allowed to start their own group. I think if they think, right, this isn't available to me, I'd love to be part of this, and they want to start that, I think that would be brilliant. Obviously, they need quite a lot of help. So obviously that's something that SU could provide. But I also think maybe the best way around this would be to allow a similar society, or maybe even not similar society or sports club, to help out. And that could either be part of the icon scheme if people really need persuading, but I also think that we do all love Plymouth Uni, so I think people would be quite up for helping a society or a sports club form and be able to bring that to the university as another option. So yeah, the other sports clubs or societies could help this startup, show them, right, this is what committee roles do, sort of a handover to a different club, and give them support throughout that if they have any questions, etc. Because it would be an extremely hard thing to do, to start a committee without having any prior knowledge to it. So I think that the education there from others would be the most important thing during that. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Mads. And finally, Owain, when you're ready.
Well, I was on a committee when I was a first year, and if anyone told me I clearly need English lessons, they didn't tell me that. If anyone told me I needed lessons or help in any way, I would have been a little bit offended. We shouldn't, and on top of that, we should absolutely not restrict anyone from being a part of the committee. We've got to remember that these, this is supposed to be fun. We're supposed to enjoy this stuff. These are hobbies. This isn't a job. This isn't, a full-time commitment. We should do this because we want to do it. And on top of that, if you're going to restrict them from that, you're going to restrict them from the CV building opportunities that they're going to get. And that's not fair. Just because they're a first year. We've got to remember that first years aren't always, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed out of college. They can be a little bit older and a little bit wiser. I wasn't, but they can be, So we need to be really, really careful with how, we're thinking about restricting certain committee positions. So when you do start at looking, to new committees, to new ideas, to new hobbies and activities, it would be ridiculous not to let that group start just because they were a bunch of first years. That's how a lot of groups do start.
Brilliant, thank you guys. So with no more questions coming in, I'm going to draw it to a close. Thank you so much for all of your answers. They were absolutely brilliant, and I wish you all the best of luck. So thank you for your time as well. It is a Monday evening, I know. But for our audience, please remember to ask the candidates any further questions you have on social media. And also don't forget to vote at www.upsu.com before midday on Friday the 5th of March, which is this coming Friday. Your vote will go towards electing your new sabbatical officer team. And also, if you vote, you will be in with a chance of winning one of 100 prizes that we have in a prize draw. So once again, thank you for all your time. Yeah, that's a wrap.
Thank you, V, and thank you everyone else for coming.
Thank you, V. Thank you, everyone that attended. Thank you, my fellow candidates. It was nice to see you guys.
I need to go and vote and get my prize.
Definitely.